Hi everyone, I hope you had a nice lunch and that you're not as sleepy as I am. And yes, I had that joke prepared. So we're going to talk today about logging and alerting in GCP. I am Diana. I'm a senior security engineer at King. And I also come from telecommunications, so I still remember some of the Maxwell's equations. Also, I'm from a network and network security background, so I know the challenges that us as security professionals face when moving from on-prem, where we have our cables and our hardware, to a completely serverless solution somewhere in the cloud. And also, I'm native from Romania, and that means I know all Dracula jokes. So if you want to hear more about Dracula mythology or vampires, please follow me on Twitter, and we can as well talk about cloud security. But that's boring. Great. So this will be our content today. It's divided into two parts. In one, we will talk about logs and alerts and the options that GCP gives us. We will state some problem and philosophy there. And then in the second part, we will show an automation framework completely built inside GCP that will help us with detection and incident response. Great. So let's start. I think this is a very busy slide and you don't see anything. So I started adding icons and we got to this. Okay, so GCP has a lot of services. It has some services like the ones you can't see there, based on computing, and other complete managed services, storage, BigQuery, or machine learning. For all those services it gives us, it has monitoring tools for diagnosis, logging, and all types of monitoring. So we will see this shortly. And also we need to remember that some services of Google work over compute engine, which are basically VMs, and they have the protections you add after over virtual networks. And then they have some complete managed services where we just need to control access to those resources. And we will see that shortly. And here, Foggy is the shared responsibility model, which we were lucky that we saw it today for Amazon as well. So basically means that we're moving from an infrastructure as a service module where we have compute engine, where we need to control everything from operating system up. And we go to completely serverless logic and elastic resources where we just need to control the access to that. And as we in King are collaborating with GCP for a couple of years, our main use cases for GCP platform are big data, because we have a lot of players and a lot of metadata for that players, and we need to parse it, as well as machine learning. And this is a super cool use case. We actually have virtual players for our games. That's, like computers that play Candy Crush. And I think that is terrific. And you can find more information on our tech blog. And the big nasty problem. So, this talk will be focused on the vision and on the perspective of moving from on-prem to the cloud and the problems that this adds. And basically the problems as follows. We are used and we are comfortable in an on-prem where we have our stack, where we have our hardware, where we know how to manage those controls. And when we're moving to the cloud environment, we see that we cannot implement the same stack, and that makes us feel we have a lack of visibility. Also in the DevOps environment, where developers are managing their own infrastructure, they're in agile technology companies, it happens more and more. And some companies even enforce that the developers manage their own infrastructure. They don't want it centralized. And this lack of centralized management also makes us feel insecure and out of control, and makes us not be too open to the cloud. And to all this, the news that we hear every day about data leaks don't make us feel very well, because most of those news are because of buckets, or storage buckets, or databases which are not properly configured. And we need to understand how we have visibility and how we can control that. And we will see how to solve this nasty problem with GCP native tools. And the second thing we are very lucky to have in the cloud is that we can very easily practice. Now, even in the demo that I will show you, I actually did that demo with my private account. In 5 minutes, I spawned it up, and I have some tokens for a full year to test. I don't need to buy an expensive appliance or to have a very complex virtual lab. I just, with 2 clicks, I am able to practice that. And that's absolutely great. So now, let's go into logging and telemetry. So I want you to also think about those slides as a cheat sheet in the future, because there are some lines of codes and some queries, and we don't need to go over them now, but they're thought, this is something that I would have loved to have a few years ago, you know, when I started looking into this. I would like to have already those slides prepared. So if it's too much information, don't worry, we're going to see it afterwards. So one of the Google's monitoring products that it has is Stackdriver, which is basically a log aggregator. And in GCP, everything is logged. Every action, every access to data is being logged. And it's being logged in JSON format, which gives us a lot of flexibility then to parse those logs. You have options to keep the logs in this Stackdriver and parse them there, of course to discard them if they're not of use, or to export them to storage, to BigQuery, or to PubSub, which is a messaging service, published subscription messaging service for your external CMs or systems. And we have audit logging for access to data. We have rich metadata telemetry for load balancer traffics, VPC flows and firewall logs, and some application-specific logging. And here we enter a little into detail. The admin activity logs are enabled by default, and it's all the activity performed by admins over resources. So this means if somebody created, modified, deleted resources, we can see all that. We can see who did it. So we kind of not even need now to have a clear audit of or inventory of our resources, because we can see who acted on the resources. Source IP, user agent, and info about the projects and the methods invoked. And on the right, you can't see, but there are some pre-done fields that you can directly use in your queries or in your investigations. And here is a query that can be used in Stackdriver to see all the activity from a subnet of Compute Engine VMs. So you can check this out later. This is access to data access logs. And if in the case of admin activity logs, we could have seen when somebody created a bucket. In this case, we can see if somebody uploaded or downloaded information from that bucket. We have the same metadata about this activity, and we can see also the methods that have been invoked, from where and what or whom did them. And here is a very nice blurry example of a query to see all activity over a bucket by a sole user. And here in the result, you can see it's a get method over the exact budget, exact object. So it's a download. So sorry, you can't see that. And here is another busy slide with VPC flows, and VPC flows are like the flows that we're used on-prem. You can have the 5-tuple with source IP and destination, IP and destination IP, source port and destination port and protocols, volume information. And in this diagram, which is from Data Studio, also a service from GCP that can help you visualize big data information, flows being one of it, you can see flows from Sol VM to several public IPs. You can see the ports, and you can see how much volume of traffic has been passed. And here are some direct queries that you can use in your investigation to see VPC flows for VM port and subnet. So, with all those informations and all those data that we've seen, now we should leverage them. And we can leverage them creating alerting. And this is a very interesting concept because we are used with parsing logs and creating alerts. So we can do the same thing in the cloud. The only difference is we have all the logs needed. We don't need to go and beg for logs to several teams. And we can alert over everything. Some can be policy and compliances, like creation of non-compliant VM, or a high non-domain account access in GCP, and others can be security related as traffic volume and high resource consumption. And on the right is an example of such alert over traffic sent bytes from a VM. But here we discover another problem. Okay, we have all the logs. Okay, you create alerts for everything. Okay, our developers have freedom, span instances, add users, do their thing. But it's very difficult to manage a scale, alerting on all those things and going on Slack on each one. Hello. Have you added this person here? You shouldn't have. So this has a high operational overhead. And being a reactive approach, and giving the freedom and being reactive, we need to react fast. So we can't, have an alert and react on it over 12 hours. So that's not a good idea. So here comes the second good part of a cloud solution, in this case GCP. As we have a log for everything, we have an API for everything. So we're going to see a clear example how we can leverage all the logs and all the APIs to create a complete automated solution to be able to feel comfortable in the cloud because we're detecting everything and we're able to respond to those challenges. So the example here is the classic and infamous public bucket. We've seen how much problems this gave. And one of the things that the public bucket has, in case of GCP, it has two ways of making it public. One is all users, which basically means is 100% public. And the second thing is role all authenticated users. And this has a little problem because people might think that all authenticated users might mean user authenticated in my organization, and that is so not true. Means all my organization. Any organization that has a GCP, a Google account, or even Gmail accounts. So you need to be authenticated with Google. So this creates a lot of problems. So basically we can create an alert with this query right here. We're checking for the member or users being added over the resource type being a bucket. And another nice thing to see is that every time you have a bucket being made public, it gives you a little message there and says, beware, it's public. It's not a good idea. Okay. So having this alert and this query, let's see how we can automate completely the response. So if in our policy is you cannot have a public bucket except if the use case is clearly analyzed before by security and we add you to a whitelisting and we approve you to be on a public bucket, which basically you need to have a public bucket only if you have public web content. If not, we will have a way to reduce it to a group or a user. So here, what's happening? I can't even see what's happening here. So, okay, what's happening here, you will see afterwards, is that we have a user that goes to a bucket and says, okay, I want to make this bucket public. And in that moment, that log that somebody made a bucket public with the filter we saw before goes to logging, to Stackdriver, to monitoring. And there we have a pub/sub listening to all the events that apply that query to. And then, and this is where the magic happens, we have a function that listens to that pub/sub. On the pub/sub, the full log comes. So it's a JSON. We can parse it. And as we said, we have the log. The function is listening to it. And then it invokes the cloud storage API to make that bucket private again. And that's instantaneous. And of course, as we respect our users, because sometimes they might be wrong, or we send them a message because we can use for parties, we can send it to Slack, an email, and send them the message saying, okay, you're not allowed to do this, but if you want to do this, this is the documentation, and we start the conversation with them. So that's super cool. And we're going to see it now. And here you have a little snippet, like this is done with less than 20 lines of code, okay? You just get it, you put it, and there you have it. So now let's see exactly how the magic happens, okay? Are you excited? Yay! Great, because I am. Can we see? Okay, we can see. This is the log export that I told you about. So here is the exact query that we saw. Okay, do I still have internet? I don't. Of course, I don't have internet. Oh, yes, I do. Okay, we have internet, people. So here is the query we talked about. So we're just checking to be all user add over this resource type. And as I said, this is my own private Google Cloud project and organization and everything done with my account, which I did it in 1 hour, so everybody can play with this. And here I'm exporting it to this destination, which this is the PubSub. If we go to the function, we can see, which is a function like Lambda functions, more or less in Amazon for people more familiar. It's listening to this topic. And this is the function. This is all. So it's super short. Here is reading the log that just came through PubSub. Here is getting the client for cloud storage. And here is discarding the role. So let's see how it happens. Okay, so this is our bucket. We're adding the member, all users. Okay. Let's add it just viewer roles. The roles are the same as every viewer, editor, full admin. And you will see that now it tells us that the bucket is public. And let's go back here and, okay, let's go back to function details. Let's have patience with it. Even if, yeah. Oh, that was a lot. Okay. So, let's refresh this. Yeah, I'm from my phone now, so the magic happened there, so you know. Okay. I have a video as well, so, okay. Let's refresh this, and we will see how it's not public anymore. See? The bucket is no longer public. And if this has refreshed, we will be able to see that the function has triggered. So this happened in how long? And how long my phone internet worked? In 20 seconds. So is that simple, and with so little things you are in control again, and you're doing something that is done very difficult on-prem, because on-prem is more difficult to interact with all our security controls and our security stacks to automate this. See, it's been triggered and the bucket is private again. So yeah, that was cool, wasn't it? Thank you, come on, I need to beg here for a minute. Perfect. And as we saw in the case for just the public bucket, of course, this can be extended to everything. So you can see here, again, but you can have a PubSub that reads logs for everything you want to enforce, being if you see a high volume consumption, if you see resource consumption, if you see that somebody added a user from outside the company or anything like that. And then you have several functions for each one. And the last thing is the notification module. You have a sole notification for everything or several, depending on how you go. And you might have one that directly sends to Slack and notifies the user, or just opens directly an incident ticket in your incident response framework. And with this, we go to the conclusions. And the idea we started with is that we don't feel comfortable on going to the cloud because we have no visibility, but we have because of the rich logging information. And then that we feel we were not in control because security controls are now distributed and managed by developers, but we do have control because we have APIs and we can do this centrally. And then what this happens is we can balance the world of user freedom with the reactive enforcing of security policies through automation, because we can automate all this and we're not afraid that we're being without the control for a too long time. And as I said, I think it's a great starting point for the transition from the on-prem mentality to the cloud mentality, feeling you know and you can interact with until you fully enter in that serverless mentality and you understand all the controls that a cloud platform can give. Thank you. Any questions?
Hi, thank you for that.
Welcome.
You have one alert here, which is an open bucket. Mm-hmm. How many alerts do you propose writing, or do you have any library of alerts that you could apply or buy from somewhere, or how many alerts are you aiming at?
Well, that's a very good idea, actually. Well, every company in its blue team or in its SOC team has a catalog of alerts and of detection that they do over time, starting with some basic alerting that everybody has, and then going to more specific alerting based on their environment. So I think this should just make part of your detection framework and detection catalog. And as you add a new detection for the production on-prem environment, because you know you have some applications and how to detect them, you can do the same thing with the cloud. And the only difference would be that you are adding a new log source for those detections. So, okay, how many you have, how many you feel necessary. If you only start using cloud using buckets, this will be enough for you. When you start using other services, you will add. But thank you for the idea. It would be nice to already have, like a set of predefined alerts and queries. Some of the queries that I've done can be directly used to create alerts. But this also depends on the CM you're using. You can do it over a CM in particular, and you'll have your queries, or you can do them directly in Stackdriver. But it's just part of the detection catalog.
Hello. Thank you so much for the presentation. It was lovely. Here. Yep. Quick question. This is an event that you can trigger very easily, something in order to fix the issue. But what happens when you receive a lot of alerts that are related to false positives? How you handle false positives in other kind of alerts that are not as easy to detect as this one?
Okay, so also in the part that you have of the detection framework that you already have on-prem, when you're designing a new alert, what you're doing is that you have a first time of doing the event discovery and starting to see, okay, I want to detect this. I want to detect when the communication happens on this port or when this user is added. You first do some queries, be it in Stackdriver or in your CM, and you see how many events that would have generated during a while, and you start tweaking that alert until it makes sense. Because you're right with something. An alert makes sense only if it's actionable. That's the idea of automation. So you just need to know your environment. I'm sure every environment is different, and you need to do an alert. Is not done like, okay, I have this query, I'm just going to enable it. You need to work on it and tweak it until it's perfect. Hope that answers your question.
Question here, thank you. I wish to ask you which kind of benchmarks or frameworks you are trying to achieve there in Google or in King, or is that something that is homemade by you or your team of security engineers, or you're trying to, which kind of level you're giving to the tools that you have in Google Cloud or external tools in order to achieve this compliance level?
I think I don't understand
the
question.
I mean, you, as your example says, I mean, you have been using products in Google Cloud in order to automate that stuff, right?
Yes.
But which kind of level, for example, you are trying to achieve CIS benchmarks, some kind of compliance level on that sense, or you're doing at King in your own team some kind of framework in order that can help you in order to achieve this? Okay,
I see what you're saying. What I was showing here was just a point of starting. So just a way of a security of a company to leverage those logs and have this control. But the fact that they follow a framework or another when they're enforcing controls, because this is just a reactive detection part, that depends in every company. We also have our types of controls that go over this. So this is more from a point of view what you need when the first day you start. Yeah. So I think it's more important to be seen from that point of view.
Yeah, if you have a particular attack or a data breach, are you able to reconstruct the activity? What is the log retention on this platform?
Okay, so you by default in Stackdriver, so you're just using Stackdriver, they have 30 days retention, which is not enough. Then you can export it to other platforms for like BigQuery, for example, or in cold storage, and then you can use whatever retention you are using in your policies. So yes, for Stackdriver is 30 days. It's just good for alerting and first incident response on something that you see. But then you need to export them somewhere where you can have a longer storage correctly. Good question. That's it.
Cool.
Thank you.